Alright guys, this is 2014 Honda Accord, and I believe this is the best used car money can buy. Coincidentally, this happens to be my car. So let's take a tour of the outside, the inside, and we'll get it on the road and I'll tell you what I think of it. Alright guys, welcome back to All Cars. I'm John, and today is a big day for me. I have dreamed my entire life of doing auto reviews, and today I'm finally diving into it and trying my first one. I'm taking it easy, I admit. This is a 2014 Honda Accord LX. Like I said, I do think it is one of the most perfect used cars out there, and it's my car. I put my money where my mouth is. I've owned this car for over 3 years now, maybe 4 years now, and today I'm going to walk you around. I'm going to give you my opinion of the outside, take a look at the interior, some of the amenities of it, not the quirks and features, but the amenities, and then we'll get it out on the road and I'll give you my opinion of it. That being said, since this is my first one ever, please like this video, please give me a comment. Keep it positive. If you've got constructive criticism, you think I did something good, you think I need to go into more detail, you think I need to stop droning on about something, please let me know. Now, when I look at a used car, I always ask myself two questions, and that's what I'm going to address in any of these reviews I do. Question number one is, would I recommend it to somebody else? And question number two is, would I own it myself? Would I like to see it in my driveway? Would I be proud to arrive somewhere? And that's the questions I'm going to answer here today. But let's jump into the outside here real quick. The first thing is I think that the Accord in this generation is one of the best looking ones they've ever done. It's classy, but not quite classic, if I can say that. It's not going to challenge a Mercedes E-Class 25 years down the road in terms of being a classic, but I love the proportions of it. It's wide, the hood is almost square. I like the proportions down the side, and it's, you know, little cut off rear end back there. Most everywhere on this car, form follows function, and they just tried to make it good looking along the way. Like these big headlights, they cast out a lot of light, but they aren't these squinty ones you see today, and they're not obnoxiously large. They're just well proportioned. You know, across the front, they give a little bit of bright work here, but you still get a real grille. It looks good, and the hood's darn, looking straight on it, it's just almost square. I love that. You know, down the side here, a couple of interesting things going on. I like the flat piece right here above the rounded wheel wells, but they continue the bright work. You know, they don't go crazy with it. Honda's reserved, and they give this bright work around it, just kind of brighten things up a little bit, including the door handles. But down the side, you end up with these character lines that give a little depth to it in profile. And then down here, of course, on the driver's side, where God intended, you have the gas filler. And then the tail lights. Form follows function again. They're big, they're chunky, they're bright, they're easy to see, they're distinctive, but they're still a little bit stylish. You get some bright work across the trunk right here, and that big Honda symbol, and then a trunk that's plenty big enough for all of the crap I keep throwing in it. So let's take a look at the interior. All right, so we'll start in the back seat here. Now this seat is set about where I sit. I'm about 5'9", 5'10" on a good day, and you can see the amount of legroom I've got back here. Don't worry, you know I'm filming this in 2021 because there's a spare package of disposable masks in here. But what I love about this, and I really looked for it when I bought this Accord, was the tan interior. We'll talk about that more in the front, but it lightens everything up. And we live in the South, while right now it's 45 degrees and I'm absolutely freezing. During the summer, it's brutally hot and humid. I like the tan interior helping lighten things up. But let me show you. You know, sliding in back here, there's plenty of space. Look at all this legroom, you know, 2 fists worth. It's got a pull down right here, got a couple of cup holders, and there's plenty of space. I can more than fit my hand up above my head sitting in the back seat. It's plenty comfortable. Power windows, child door locks, and a little cubby to stick things. A little bit map pockets back here. The one thing the LX does not have is, if you can see it, there's no vents back here. That was one of the big downsides, but I didn't want to upgrade to an EX just to get that, because I almost never carry anyone back here, and if they're in my back seat, they shouldn't be complaining. Now up front, it's a similar kind of story. Again, this is where I'm seated. Over here, you've got your power windows right there on the door, power locks, cruise, audio control. Yeah, I don't know, I can phone from here. There's an econ button, there's a traction control. It's just generally super, super comfortable. The seat's firm, but not obnoxiously so. And I like the two-tone dash. This beige tan down on the upper and the darker upstairs with just this little bit of other color in the middle. It's a nice mix of textures, but I remember, I think it was back 2 or 3 generations before, one of the auto reviews, one of the magazine reviews described it as like biting into a visual Milky Way bar. So let's take a closer look. All right, so here we are inside, and it's roomy. I mean, if you look up over my head, more than enough room for a hand to fit up there. Personally, I love the gauges. This huge speedometer even gives you a tachometer, even though this does have the CVT, and then a couple of essential gauges over there. Let's close the door. Brr. Cubbies down here, power outlet, if you can see that. It's even got a USB port hidden around there. A couple of good sized cup holders. Armrest full of crap. Here's my COVID card. This doesn't move forward. That's always bothered me. I would have liked it to slide forward a little bit. But generally, just super comfortable. Now, this is at the dawn of, let me get my keys out. This is at the dawn of infotainment. So they put it in this little screen. It's not touchscreen or anything else. It's all controlled from right here, and it's set back. You know, dash, it's a little soft material up here. It's honestly, I think it's nicer than some of the new cars I've seen. It's a vinyl wrap steering wheel, but it's super comfortable. And look how it's held up. This car has about 55,000 miles on it. Let's see. Oh, 50. Oh. Yeah. 50. No. 55, 652. There we go. Got the little econ button on right there. I don't know what that really does. The one thing I've noticed for sure is in the summer is if you press the econ button, the blower motor for the air conditioning slows down. So sometimes during the peak of summer, I will actually press that button off. But most of the time, I don't notice a performance difference overall. But, you know, soft material, you know, hard material, hard material. I love this fabric right here, but it does stain kind of easily. But overall, you know, this mix of materials right here, it's a super, super attractive interior with pretty big vents, pretty good circulation. But like I said, this car is like a spaceship compared to my previous car, which is a 2007 and a base level car. I had power windows and power locks. That was it. It was even a manual. So this car, I get in, I start it. My headlights are automatic. My heat and air are automatic. I literally just click an on button and let it go. I've got Bluetooth, which is a major requirement so I can make phone calls. It'll read text to you. And it's super easy because, it's just so basic. You know, you can pick an AM, FM, you can choose a CD, auxiliary, it'll go to Bluetooth. We'll talk about this in a minute. You can click, all right, so you can go past auxiliary, you can click on settings, and they're super, super simple. You know, you want to change your sound settings. There you go. You want to change your camera, like your backup camera. Yes or no. Vehicle setup. you know, like this. How long do you want your interior light to time off, or the headlight auto off, or the sensitivity of it? It's got the essentials. It's not as fancy as what you'd have now, obviously, but it's got the essentials, and it's really well packed for most of what people need. You don't have Apple Android. You don't have, Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. But what you do have is the ability for Bluetooth to connect and for you to use your phone. That's really what I need. Doesn't have navigation, but I love it. It's got everything you need. And, you know, as you'd expect, a couple of lights up here, place to put the sunglasses I don't wear. You know, yes, it's got that. Yeah. So generally just everything you need. But one of the things I love about it is I'm a big fan of like the Ford Fusion and the Camry, and they really try to make their interiors more like a cockpit. Really come down here. And when you sit in the Fusion, you get the feeling that it's a little lower, that this is a little higher, that this is just a little higher as well, and it wraps right here. You also see that in the new Honda. So what you get is a car that feels more confined. I like how squared off this is. It feels more open and airy. So let's take it for a drive, and I'll tell you some opinions and the few things I've had wrong with it. All right, so let's take this thing on the road for a quick drive, and I guess I'll say that the driving is, to me, one of the choices you'd have between, say, a Camry or the Fusion and the Accord. Both of those other ones, like I said, are more cockpit-like interior. This is a little more open and airy, and there's a sense of lightness about this car. You know, what I like to think is, if you've ever driven a BMW, or you remember that first time you drove a BMW, they feel special, right? They feel, at least the one I drove, it felt exquisite. But when I drove an Accord shortly thereafter, I actually preferred the manual transmission in it. And that kind of continues with this car. It's not luxury. I'm not trying to oversell it from that perspective, but it is excellent in the fact that it does everything you ask, and it does it extremely well. The use of space, keeping the weight down. The engine, I don't know how much horsepower it makes. I think it's 185, something like that. But it's entirely adequate. It doesn't ever feel fast. It never feels like a sports car, but it feels eminently capable in every way and in every circumstance. You want to cruise down the interstate, it tracks great. You want to floor it and pull in front of somebody, it does great. You want to hypermile it and get the best gas mileage you can, it does great. If you want a lot of space to spread out, it does great. I love this car, and that's why I bought it. But it's not perfect, and there's a couple of downsides. And like I said, talking about the Accord, the Camry, and the Fusion, one of the deciding factors would be noise level and ride, or two deciding factors. And that is that the Accord is more on the sporty side versus the Camry. It's not a Mazda 6, but it's, again, very, very competent, but it does have a slightly harsher ride than, say, a Camry. The Camry leans more plush, the Accord leans more sporty, and the other side of that is noise level. Now, my wife has told me I'm ridiculous about this. And around town, you hear it a little bit from the engine, get a little bit of wind noise, but mostly it's tire noise. And that's the thing that really bothers me. The rougher the road and the interstates, there's a lot more noise in here. Now, normally the radio more than keeps up with that. But it's noticeable to me that other cars would be better, like this Camry that's following me right now. So there is that noise level. It's a little noisier, it's a little rougher riding, but not horribly so. And I can say that I took about a 5-hour drive to the middle of Georgia. I live here in Charlotte, and it's a boring drive. Okay, there's nothing out there. It's just horribly boring. But I had a chance to do it in my car and in my mother-in-law's Camry Hybrid. And I felt the same when I got there or when I got back in both those cars. I was equally fresh from both of those cars. So I don't want to play this up too much, but drive them. This just feels a little bit more sporty. And I would say that the noise is the one thing that really is annoying to me. It's not a Buick. That's what I'm trying to say. This is not a Buick. And it's not trying to be, but it feels lighter and more tossable and more enjoyable in almost every other way. Now, Hondas have a reputation for absolutely exceptional quality. And I would say this is no different with this one. I mean, I've got some stains here on the handles, but it's a 7-year-old car now, and that's to be expected. I've got some stains on the seats over here. That's what happens when you have 4 kids. I have a guy slamming on the brakes in front of me for no reason with no signal. But I have had a couple of problems with this car. Number one is the Bluetooth is finicky. Now, Honda swears it's an issue with iPhones. I'll just have to take their word for it. 95% of the time, it's never an issue, okay? I hop in, it connects a little slowly, but it connects, and I get to play my podcast, and everything's fine. The other 5% of the time, it either won't work at all, or it will actually work, but you lose any ability to control up here at the head unit. So that it might play my podcast, but I can't fast forward, and it doesn't display what it's actually playing, the title, or the progress. The other thing is, I did about 2 years ago now, year and a half, something like that. So a year and a half, let's say, after I bought it, 2 years, I started to have an issue with the starter. I would go to turn it on, and nothing would happen. And at first, I was like, I must not have caught it, right? And so I'd turn it and then everything would fire right back up. Then it started to do it more frequently. And so I did some research online, and apparently this is a relatively well-known but not terrible problem with this generation car and its starter. And normally what would happen, and I did it for months. I went months without fixing the thing, guys. You'd turn it, and then it would start. And one day it would not start. I made an appointment to take it into my dealership, and of course the first time I went out it started. When I got to the dealership, it started right up, but sure enough, $700 later, I had a new starter in it. The reason I didn't do it myself is because my wife, I replaced the starter on her Odyssey when she had it, and that didn't fix the problem. So I wanted to lean on them and their analysis of my problem to make sure I was correct. Other than that, the car's been flawless. I use synthetic oil in it. I have it changed about every 7,500 miles or so. I drive an okay amount, but not an incredible amount. And gas mileage, that's another thing. For a relatively big 4-cylinder, it makes pretty good power. I drive relatively gently. I mean, I'm doing 38 right now, in a 35, however. I'm getting 29.6 miles per gallon on this tank. And that's about average for me. I do mixed driving. I'll get on the highway and then I'll drive little back roads like this right here, and 30 miles to the gallon, 28 to 30 miles a gallon everywhere. If I get on the interstate and I'm just doing nothing but interstate, I could almost get 40 if I'm really careful, but more likely it's going to be like 38 or so. And I'm thrilled with that. I'm absolutely thrilled with that. And it's one of the reasons I don't want to get rid of this car. It's eminently reliable. It'll last me for another 10 years, and I get great gas mileage. So, love the car. But I want to finish with the CVT transmission. Now, CVTs are roundly hated. When you get in and you look at auto reviews, magazine articles, they hate CVTs. And in early CVTs, I agree. The early Nissans, the early Volkswagen Group, they were droning, miserable things. And if you remember, Subaru had one back in the 90s. It was horrible. The best I will say about this transmission is I never think about it. And that tells me it's nearly perfect. Because, like the air conditioner, which I don't have on, I never think about it. I just turn it on and it it does its thing. The headlights, I don't think about them. They just come on when it's the time. Honda sweated the details, and this car just works flawlessly. I'm now navigating a roundabout. These are unusual here in North Carolina, so people still don't know what to do. So you have to be careful. The CVT, honestly, if I didn't know it was a CVT, I wouldn't think it was anything but a regular transmission. You press on the gas, it revs up, it has artificial shift points in it, it gets great gas mileage. The one time I notice it is if you're going uphill at a steady rate of acceleration, like an on-ramp to an interstate. It will peg an RPM and drone there. And that's the only time you ever think about this, because that's the moment you're like, something sounds wrong. Oh, okay, it's the train. I know what it is. The rest of the time it works flawlessly. I press it downshifts. I lift up, it just works flawlessly like everything else in the car. So in conclusion, should you buy a 2014 or this generation Honda Accord? Well, I would argue that recording this in November 2021 with car prices where they are, maybe you should hold off buying anything. But if you're in the market for a mid-sized, middle-of-the-road used car, this absolutely should be on your list. And I think you should put it number one. I think the Camry and the Fusion, and certainly this, are right at the top. But I chose this. My money went right here. And so let's go back to those two questions that I mentioned at the beginning. Question number one, would I recommend this to other people? And the answer is absolutely. I'm doing it right now. As a matter of fact, I recommended one to my mother-in-law. But it's down to preferences. She prefers the Camry. She prefers the ride of the Camry. My wife prefers Hondas. So it depends totally on you. I would absolutely recommend it, but again, put it on your list at least. But question number two is, would I be proud to own one? There's a lot of cars that I would recommend to people, but I don't necessarily want to own them. And this one, I think the answer is obvious because it's my car. This is the one I actually chose. I park it here, and I will go anywhere with this. I've driven across a field in this to look at property. I have taken it to the Symphony. So this is absolutely 100% yes. One of my favorite cars, and yes, I'm proud to have it in my driveway. So guys, I appreciate you being here. Please, again, give me a thumbs up. Please leave me a positive comment below. Let me know what you think. Be kind. It's my first one, so I've got a lot of editing and a lot of figuring out how this is all going to come together and how it's going to look. So appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.